Alright guys, hope you're doing well. My name is Lewis Moon and this is my video for the HGME Collective. Very quickly, I am the owner of hairanalysis.report. This is a online application to generate very detailed hair mineral analysis reports. So a lot of practitioners use this system to create awesome reports and supplement reports for their clients. I'm also the co-owner of Valence Nutraceuticals. So Valence Nutraceuticals is a supplement brand specifically designed for hair mineral analysis and mineral balancing. I'm also the co-owner of Life Labs HTMA. So this is a YouTube channel that has been going for quite a long time. I've got hundreds of videos on there with my journey and healing journey and talking about hair analysis, mineral balancing, copper toxicity, adrenal burnout. You name it, there's probably a video on there. So that's a very brief overview, and this video is going to be a little bit different to what you might be expecting. And this video is going to be about my journey that sort of happened when I got a good hold on HTMA and mineral balancing. I'm just going to get you down there in the corner so you can see me all right. Cool. All right, so what's this video all about? So essentially, I started the program quite a long time ago. I'm 34 now, and I came across the program when I was 21. And I was very ill. I had a lot of brain fog, derealization, depression, anxiety, complete detachment from reality. I had that for about 5 years prior to finding the program. And I was in a big mess, to be honest with you. I'd taken Roaccutane, did a lot of recreational drugs, drank a lot of alcohol, and by the time I found the program, I was in a big mess. So much so that I ended up essentially traveling to Thailand to spend a year in Thailand just trying to heal myself on the program. And I was so detached from reality and so completely disconnected that essentially all I did really was the program, just because I wanted to um, fix all of these various issues. And I find a lot of people fall into a similar situation whereby they feel that the program is going to essentially solve all their issues. And the program's absolutely fantastic for healing, and there's a lot of information out there about lifestyle and how to live essentially a good life. But I went through a bit of a crisis, I suppose, around 5 years into healing. It took me around 5 years before, I started to really get permanent healing, throughout the day, where I had energy throughout the day consistently. And one of the things that started to happen to me was, I was feeling a little bit disillusioned because I put all my hopes on the program to make me happy. And that's when I went through this big journey of trying to understand human happiness and human fulfillment, because I realized fairly quickly that, although my health was much better and I could live, a life whereby I had energy all day and I didn't have the brain fog, I didn't have the derealization, I was feeling incomplete. I knew there was more to it. And that's when I went on this second journey, I suppose, of understanding what it means to be a human, what it means to be happy, what it means to be fulfilled. And this is what I want to talk about in this presentation, because the whole point of healing is to feel fulfilled, part of life, quote unquote happy. So hopefully I'm going to share some light on this today. And it might feel overwhelming in the beginning when I talk about all this stuff, but I do try and simplify it towards the end of the video. So if you could stay until the end, you'll start to see how I've managed to pull everything together. So obviously began with the program, and although it improved my health a lot, I felt like there was things missing. And I sort of realized that humans need more than just good health. And that's the journey I went on. So the first thing that I come across was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you might have heard about this. Um, and this was a light bulb moment for me where I realized that, all right, I've sort of got my basic survival needs met. I'm doing the program and, had a roof over my head, etc., etc. And I started to have a little bit of stability because I was making some money for myself. But I remember, I was doing a coffee enema, and I just got this overwhelming feeling that I have to go out and make some friends, and because find my tribe, so to speak. And it was just overwhelming feeling, and it was really confusing because I thought, well, why am I not happy? I'm doing the program, I'm feeling good. You know what I mean? I obviously had human interaction, but I just had this overwhelming feeling that I literally have to go out and meet people, and it was really a really powerful thing, and I was really stressed out about it as well because you know I didn't have much confidence in doing that because of what I'd gone through. I didn't know where to look. I was confused because I was thinking, well, why am I not just happy doing the program and do you know what I mean, earning a bit of money? Why wasn't I happy? And then saw this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I thought, well, this is showing me actually that once I've sort of got these two levels, uh, you know, fairly full, the next one seems to be friendship and community. And I was like, well, that makes sense now. It put me at ease. And I remember forcing myself out into the world, and I went to, some spiritual events and this, that, and the other, and I forced myself into this new world. And over time, I ended up making good quality friends, and I felt like I'd sort of found my tribe, and that was a big missing piece for me. Um, and there's a couple of other um, aspects to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is esteem and self-actualization. Self-actualization really is just um, your full genetic potential as a human being. But this, what is a human being, was still elusive. So although I went out and met friends, and I felt like I'd found my tribe and a sense of community, there were still other things missing that I couldn't quite put my finger on. So the search continued essentially. And then one day I come across the work of a guy called John Butcher, John and Missy Butcher. And I saw this advertisement on YouTube, and it was this guy called John Butcher who'd created this unbelievable life for himself. And he essentially broke down his life into categories. So you got a health and fitness category, intellectual category, emotional, character, spiritual, romantic, parenting, social, career, financial, quality of life, and your life vision. And this was a major eye opener for me because I felt like I'd found for the first time someone who had managed to categorize all this stuff because, we're all looking all the time. I would imagine a lot of people watching this video, we're always watching podcasts, listening to podcasts, reading various things on Instagram and Facebook, and how to have a good relationship, and how to maybe meet friends, or loads of stuff on financial and career. But I felt like this guy had you know put everything into a box, and I was like, oh, brilliant, this is what I was looking for. And I would recommend everyone to do this program because it is absolutely mind-blowing how good it is. And he sort of goes through each category and talks about the importance of each category. And then you go through a process, what do you believe about that category? Because if you've got your incorrect beliefs about things, so financial, if you believe deep down that money is the root of all evil, for example, you're going to have problems getting money and being abundant. So you create your beliefs, or you write down your beliefs, and then you write down, because you might have to change your beliefs, and then you write down a vision for that category. So um, let's see, maybe my career vision would be to build an app. That was actually one of my visions, to build a hair analysis app. And you create this amazing vision, and then you ask yourself why you want to create that vision. and then you want to ask yourself, a strategy to do it. So this was brilliant, you know, all of this great stuff. And I went through the life book process. It took me a long time because there's a lot of content there. And, started to figure out all these different visions, what I wanted for my life. And it turns out actually one of the visions that I had for my love relationship, for my romantic relationship, I actually ended up manifesting. And I ended up finding that, one of the reasons why I wasn't feeling complete when I found all these friends is because my love relation, I didn't have a romantic partner. So that was an aspect that was empty for me, and I didn't really think too much about parenting, even though I didn't have a child at that particular moment. So I started realizing all these different pockets of what it means to be a human, and I created this life vision for myself, and it was fantastic. One of the issues I had with this, and I'm not saying this is bad, I definitely think everyone should do Life Book, was it was overwhelming in my head to compartmentalize everything in my head, how do I balance everything out? And, I would find myself burning out here or neglecting this thing. And, it was a bit of a jumble. It was a bit of a mess, although there is, advice on how to implement all this stuff. There's 12 categories here and you've got to balance them all out. And it's like, oh my God, what do I do? And, you know, it was difficult to manage everything, so to speak. Um, so yeah, I felt overwhelmed. There was some burnout involved. I was trying to manage and juggle everything at the same time and do and make sure everything's trying to balanced in my daytime. And I needed a more simplistic approach, essentially. So another thing that I come across was a book by John Gray. So if anyone's heard of John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, brilliant book about the dynamics between male energy and female energy. I definitely recommend that book. But he also wrote another book. I think it's much less well known. It's called How to Get What You Want and Want What You Have and Want What You Have: A Practical Guide to Personal Success. And that book was a major eye opener for me as well. So John Gray ended up becoming a monk for 10 years, and he found this inner peace, this inner connection to God. And but he also realized that you can't just sit around meditating all day. God wants you to create, God wants you to build and help people and all this sort of stuff. And he ended up becoming a relationship coach. And he was realizing in his relationships that he wasn't, although he had all this amazing information about the dynamics between male and females and how they interact, there was times when these people just weren't happy. And John Gray ended up discovering what he calls love tanks. All right. So he found that humans have got these love needs, and you've got to, you know, fill up all of these love needs for you to be a complete human. And he found out that when people were struggling in relationships, one of the reasons why they were struggling is because there was low on various love tanks. So, one of the things that ends up happening when you're in a romantic relationship is the honeymoon phase starts. You end up not seeing your friends as much, maybe not seeing your parents as much. Um, you might not be focusing too much on your uh, service to humanity, yada yada yada. So all these tanks start, you know, lowering these love tanks. And he found that when he said to his clients, "We'll just, don't focus on each other too much for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks, and go and fill up all your love tanks." And what he found out is that when they did that, all of a sudden they were back to their normal. Well, they were happy, and because they'd filled themselves up. And this was amazing for me because I sort of started linking it up more to God and spirituality, and realizing that we all hear about God is love, and love is the most important thing. And a sort of light bulb moment went off when I realized that humans have got all these needs for love. And I quite like the love tanks because it wasn't based on money and it wasn't based on materialism. I'm not saying that they're not bad; they're bad things. But if you think about maybe our past when we was living as hunter gatherers, and maybe even our future. If you think about in the future, we might not have money, but what's going to stay? Probably these love tanks are going to be foundational to our growth as a soul. So just quickly, you've got God's love. So this is divine, God's love coming in. So you feel this when you're meditating. You feel this when you're relaxed. You feel this when, you're doing the program helps. Then you got parental love, love from parents. Some of us don't have parents. This is where, someone like a health practitioner or a psychologist can help fill that love tank by giving them a sort of parental love. Then you got social bonds, friends, family, fun, peer support. So people, they're your friends, but they're friends because they're interested in what you're interested in, or sort of work friends. And then you got self love. How do you love yourself? Do you respect yourself? Do you look after yourself? Do you just accept yourself? Romantic love, so love for a partner. Dependent love, so this could be a child, it could be a pet, or it could be looking after a garden or plants. Community love, and then God's love through service. So that's the end one where you then pour out into the world. And this was great for me because it made the whole happiness and fulfillment journey a lot more stronger. And I appreciated that, at the end of the day, we have these big needs for love. And you'll actually find that there's overlaps with, John Gray's categories for life. Um, and I started getting a much bigger picture of what it means to be fulfilled and happy. And but I was still struggling with overwhelm. How do you balance all this stuff? You know, um, it's difficult. John Gray says in his book, well, to balance it, you just basically jump from one tank to another. And, I found that trying to do that wasn't ideal because it just become out of alignment. And, the way that John Gray balances his is it's kind of a complex way where you're trying to balance it all out in a day, and you plan your weeks and you plan your months, and, you know, a lot to do, when you got a life to live essentially. Um, but yeah, definitely moving forwards. Um, so yeah, I had difficulty keeping everything fulfilled. I needed a simpler framework and um, yada yada yada. So this went on for quite a few years of just trying to balance all this stuff and working out my vision for each category, and working out strategies. And I had all loads of different ways of organizing stuff. I tried building apps to balance all this out. I tried using diaries. I'm not saying diaries are bad, but all these different things of trying to juggle everything and trying to make everything work. And then it dawned on me that I needed to try and simplify this whole process. And all of a sudden, I sort of realized that um, there's sort of three main categories: your a personal category, which is your own self, your own health, your own self care; a people category, which is relationships and community; and a purpose category, which is meaningful work, contribution, etc. There is another P that we'll get to. I ended up figuring out these three P's just because I ended up kept burning myself out, kept doing too much work, and sort of realized that although work is important, you have to go through this process. So essentially, if you think of each of these three categories like tanks, you've got to fill your personal tank up first. Okay, this is your own health, your own self care. If you don't fill the personal tank up, the other two, there's no point, really investing yourself into it. And then the second thing is people. People are the most important thing. A lot of people think that work is the most important. This is something that I fell into, and I see it all the time with other individuals where they will prioritize work. And that is the wrong thing to do. You'll always burn yourself out if you prioritize work. You got to prioritize people after personal, because we're social beings, we're communal beings. If you look at it from a spiritual perspective, we're all souls. and we're here for each other. That's how we grow a lot of the time. And then once you've focused on them two things, your purpose, your meaningful work and contribution. And I found out when I just focused on these like that, it was much easier for me to compartmentalize everything in my head, you know. So I would wake up and, I'd have the personal category in my head, make sure I'm eating good, make sure if I'm feeling stressed, I will go and take myself off and de-stress, make sure that I'm just looking after myself essentially, because it's very easy just to fall straight into purpose. You wake up and you work, and it's very easy just to not be around people, especially in today's world. And it's getting worse with AI. This is why I think this presentation is going to be massive. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. This whole um, thing that I'm talking about. And what I realized is that by focusing on these three things in this order, I was way happier. And what you're doing essentially is you're filling up your cup. You're filling up your cup, and personal's a big one. And then if you focus on people after that, you'll find that your cup is really full, and then you can pour out this love that you've filled up into your work, into your purpose, into meaningful contribution. But then I realized, I always realize this, but then I realized something else that's quite profound is that, there's obviously another big category, another P. And that is uh, presence. I called it presence, which is essentially God. God is and if you don't believe in God, that's fine. The three P's will serve you well. But one thing that you'll realize is that God is the key, the main factor really in your life. However, what I will say is if you don't get these three P's sorted out first, it's very difficult to feel God. You have to be very relaxed and very present to feel God. This is why the first P of personal is so important. You've got to put that one first, and then people. And then you will be able to hear God, feel God, work with God much more easily. I got into the problem way too many times of focusing too much on work, you know, and focusing too much on career, financial, and it doesn't work. You've got to do it in a specific order, um, for it to work essentially. And you have to realize that um, working with God and feeling grateful and realizing that God's working with you and God loves you is a way better way of living your life than just focusing on these three things, because you very easily will still get confused and ungrounded even if you've got these three things in nicely in order, um, because you end up having existential issues, um, and feeling ungrounded. Um, so having that fourth P, which is presence, God, um, sort of rounds everything up, understandably. However, you will not feel that presence. You will not feel that presence if the initial three P's are not in correct order and are not filled up in the correct order. If you put people first, which some people do, or you put purpose first, which most people do, you will you will have you will run into struggles constantly, constantly, constantly. So that was a big eye opener for me. Well, I always knew God was a big part of my life, but you've got to get the right order for you to be able to feel that presence. So what you'll find is that the four P's, personal, people, purpose, and presence, you'll be able to fit all of John Butcher's categories into there. Health and fitness is personal, intellectual life is personal, emotional life is personal, character is personal. It all fits in nicely. People is your love relationship, parenting, social life, purpose, career, financial life, vision, present, spiritual life. They all fit in. The same with John Gray and his love tank theory. They will fit into these four categories. Self-love, personal, people, it's a big one, purpose, presence. All right? So I'm not saying that John Butcher and John Gray are incorrect. They are the foundation. I think doing the John Butcher's life book course and reading John Gray's book is fantastic. Um, it gives you the fuel, it gives you the fruit. But in order to live all of that, it's best to because I just don't think the brain can handle that much stuff trying to compartmentalize all the categories. So it's much more easier for the brain to just do it this way, where it's like, all right, personal, people, purpose, presence. Presence ends up becoming number one. Once you've got personal tank filled and people tank filled, um, you'll find that the presence P will become like number one. Because you're getting that influx all the time. Um, so one of the questions I always had as well was, where does it come from? Because I was thinking, well, what's it mean for a human to be happy? I was thinking, where does it come from? Where's it come from? And you realise that our ancestors and the way that we lived in the past, it had all of these, the 4P theory, John Gray's love tanks and John Butcher's categories. It was already accounted for. So on a personal level, we just ate good food because that's what was around us. It was heirloom, nutrient dense food. Do you know what I mean? We would wake up at a reasonable time. We would, experience sunlight. We would be out in nature. All this for the majority of the time, which makes sense why personal is the first tank because they had this relaxed air about them most of the time. If you look up and watch animals, they're not running around all day like crazy people like we do. They're quite relaxed most of the time. And they was already surrounded by the community. They was already surrounded by elders, parents, children, animals. A lot of these tribes that have pets. Um, Friends, you know what I mean? Friends within the tribe that they had shared interests with. So that was already there, the people aspect. And without people, what have you got? Think about it. Without people, what have you got? So people's so important. And, I think even if society fails and, the Romans were only around for 1500 years and that collapsed. So imagine if it just all went, what would you be left with? We'd be left with people. Do you know what I mean? So people is the core of God's creation because you're interacting with souls. And one thing that fascinates me is near-death experiences, and they all have the same experience. They'll feel this overwhelming love, which is God and complete unconditional love, and they all have life reviews. And every single life review, every one was not about how much money they made, was not about what they necessarily did in the world. It was how they treated other people, the golden rule. So that's what it was all about. How did you treat other people? Did you treat your neighbour like you would like to get treated yourself? And if you mistreat someone, you felt their pain in the life review. So that's another aspect of, the world really is about people. But another thing that you hear in these life reviews is that these people have to go back to Earth life because they have a purpose, they have a mission, they have a duty. They've come to this Earth for a reason, and the reasons, you know. And interestingly enough, on the near-death experiences, these people never get told what their purpose is. They forget that. They can remember everything else, but they forget the purpose, because if they was told what their mission was, it kind of dilutes the whole point of having a mission on this planet, if that makes sense. Because the whole mission is just feeling that small voice within, which is why the 3Ps are so important, because you've got to be relaxed to feel that voice and feel that guidance. But purpose in our ancestral would be, the purpose for a male, which I can speak to much better because I am a male. The purpose would be to provide, essentially, for the community. But you would also have purpose in teaching others about various things, and being a good person and high moral value, and so all that sort of stuff. And then presence was just naturally part of their life spiritually. God is nature, and just being out in nature, you can feel the presence of God. God speaks to you much greater, from my experience in nature, and I've heard that a lot of the time. So they already had this presence, they already had this connection to this spiritual world. So this is where this happiness comes from. It was already built for us, on one level, and this is why we have all these instincts that we struggle to put our finger on. Why do I feel like that? Or why do I have this emptiness? And hopefully this is providing you with some of the answers. Now, things have changed and I think probably if you spoke to me about this in a year or two, I would probably be able to give you even more information. But I feel like it's quite solid for me at the moment, and this is good. So this is why I feel comfortable talking about this in detail now. Interestingly, when I did the program, it took me about 5 years before I felt comfortable being a practitioner. So if you think I was 21 and I became a practitioner when I was about 28, 26. And then I really started having to look into this deeper when I was about 27. And then it's probably took me a good 5 years of trying to figure all this out. So that's 32, and now I'm 34. So similar cycle. So yeah, hopefully that's shed some light onto the next step of healing, which is your journey towards self-actualization. And I do feel like this is a solid scientific approach, really, because if you actually look, all the science is already there about how we used to live, and we're just bringing that into the modern world. So there's a lot more I can talk about. You can go into every category and talk about romantic relationships and parental and social, all this sort of stuff, and I do want to talk about that further. So if you are interested, I would be quite happy to add you to an email list. So all you got to do is just send me an email, maybe tell me how you enjoyed this talk or presentation, and I can add you and we can connect. So my email address is lewis@deephealingspace.com. So lewis@deephealingspace.com. You can find me on Instagram at Hair Analysis App. So yeah, I've obviously got the Hair Analysis App, and that's where I'm sort of mostly on at the moment, is Hair Analysis App. And I've got the YouTube channel, which is Life Labs HTML. I don't do as many videos as I used to do. I just feel like I've spoke a lot about hair analysis and mineral balancing, but I do think my next venture is going to be this journey towards self-actualization, and I will be speaking much more about human happiness and fulfillment, and how to achieve that in the modern world, which is more difficult than you might expect. It's one of the reasons why I've done this presentation. All right, so thanks for watching, and hope you enjoy the rest of the HTMA Collective. I was the person actually that organised the HTMA Collective, so I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll speak to you all soon. All right, ciao.